You're listening to Faith Breathed Hope, Accelerated Edition, episode number 21. Today, I speak with hope expert Lindsay Recknell on the science of hope. Welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, where we gain inspiration and motivation from others who share their touching stories of renewing hope and discovering purpose in any circumstance. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today we will be encouraged by another tremendously inspirational topic that will embolden you to release fear, begin taking small steps forward, and move into your God-given purpose to live and serve in this life. Join me for today's story. Hey, Lindsay, and welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope show. How are you?
I am so well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad you're here. So the first thing I do with all of my guests is I have them tell the audience a little bit about who they are, what they do, and then we go into the story.
Yeah, awesome. So my name is Lindsay Recknell, and I am an expert in hope. So I came to this profession, this passion, this expertise because of a from a very personal place, for very personal reasons. And for me, it was about recognizing that my future could be better than it was in my deepest, darkest moments. For me, that was back in 2013. And what I realized in that moment was that it was up to me to do something to move me into a better place. And for me, that motivation came from my hope. And although we know that hope is a feeling, it's intrinsic, you can describe what hope feels like, it wasn't enough. And so when I started to learn and to research around hope, I found that there was an actual science of hope related to positive psychology. And that data, that evidence-based research around hope really made it real, really made it practical and something I could really hold on to and use. And I wanted to teach other people what that looked like and how they could also use it in the same way. And so fast forward to today and who I am and what I do. And I teach people to use hope to motivate action so their futures will be better than today.
That is amazing. That's awesome. So you want to dive in a little deeper with your story? I mean, we all have adversity. We all face things that we don't like, but a lot of times circumstances that we have no control over, things that come into our lives that really have the power to put us to our knees, bring us to our knees rather. And, it takes a lot to stand up. It takes a lot to persevere, and it takes a lot to renew hope. There's so many people that don't do that. So if you'd like to share more about that, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, I would. So as I mentioned, my story started about 9 years ago. My husband and I met. We met in the the old-fashioned way. We met online, but way back before swiping left and right was a thing. I met this wonderful man. We had a pretty typical relationship. We, bought a house, got married, got a dog, had, comfortable jobs. We had a comfortable lifestyle. Things are going well. In 2013, we decided to move from my hometown to where my parents had moved to. So they had moved 15 years earlier, and they'd always wanted us to move towards them. So we thought we'll pick up and we'll move there. So in August of 2013, we sold our house and we moved to the coast. And it was great for the first 3 weeks. It was really awesome. On our trip to the island, we found out that we were pregnant. We tried really hard for the previous almost a year to conceive with no success, but literally on the trip on the way there, we found out that we were pregnant, and so we sort of celebrated and planned the whole trip. when we got to the island, we had our dream home there, and you know, we spent the first 3 weeks really loving being close to my family, and you know, dreaming and hoping about what our new family looked like. We had two dogs, and we brought them with us, and they were loving the acreage life, as you can imagine. And we were on a dog walk, and one of our dogs was hit by a car and killed on our dog. And that was absolutely traumatizing. I don't know the depth of emotion that a person can feel for their pet was absolutely heart-wrenchingly, heartbreakingly awful. I don't remember feeling quite that way about a person in my life. I've been very lucky. I haven't had people really close to me that passed away, but so I don't really have anything to compare it to. But losing our dog, and he was our first dog. He was the dog we brought into our relationship together, was devastating. It was devastating for me, but even more devastating for my husband. They had a bond like nothing you've ever seen before. So that was end of September. Fast forward a couple of months, about 6 weeks, and I went in to have my 15-week checkup for my pregnancy, and the baby had no heartbeat. And so at 15 weeks, after just losing the dog, I had a miscarriage and had to have surgery, have a D&C to remove the baby. So again, heartbreaking after we had tried for so long, just after losing the dog and after living out the life and moving an animal. It was the second. And as we all know, bad things typically come in threes. So a few weeks after that, maybe a month after that, we decided we were going to get a puppy. We were going to because we still had our other dog, and he was quite lonely without having his brother. And so we called our breeder, and we got another dog, and we call him our little mixed blessing, because we wouldn't have him if we hadn't lost our first dog. But he is a delight. He is just the greatest little bundle of awesomeness. And something that's cool is he has the same mom as our first dog. So there's an even cooler connection there. So we just got him. We went on our very first off-leash walk with this little dog and our big dog. And we lived in the island, we lived in the forest, and we had them off-leash. We picked a very safe, flat place to go. Our big dog chased a rabbit up the hill, and when he came down the hill, he came down where the hill had eroded, and he lost his footing, and he landed on his head, and he almost lost his eye. So in 3 months, I guess? Yeah, 3 months. We've now lost a dog, lost a baby, and almost lost an eye of our third dog. So, okay, so now we're reeling, but things are going okay. The fourth and final straw of the year, we were doing a renovation in our house. We were doing a bathroom renovation, and downstairs one evening, and water started dripping through the ceiling into the basement. There'd been a leak in the bathroom renovation, and the water was pouring through the floor into the basement. Again, doesn't seem like a big deal, but when it's the fourth thing in 4 months, it was a lot. And that was it. That was the bottom. That was the breaking point. So we rolled into Christmas that year. Two broken people and a really broken family. Husband coped with his grief and all of the changes with beer, and I coped with the grief and all of the changes through working too much. Both of us retreated into our own place. There was a lot of anger, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of independence. We really pulled away from each other instead of pulling towards each other, because we didn't been through any of this before. What do we know about how to handle it? We were not in a familiar place from both of us have been in our hometown for 25 years, 30 years, and we're still only 4 months into this new place, so it wasn't familiar. We didn't have our friends around. I had my family, and they were awesome. They love us both. Like, we both were born into that family, so we're very fortunate that way. But still, they hadn't dealt with anything like this before, and they didn't know what to do either. So, he drank, and I worked, and that's how we dealt with it for the next year before we finally said, like, this is enough. This is not working. We need to go back to what we know, which is what's comfortable, and make another new start in something new. He also couldn't find work out there, so I was able to take my work with me and work from home, but he couldn't find work out there. And so a big part of your identity is your profession, is your career. And he had left an awesome career to follow my dream with me, to move closer to my family. And, not being able to find a job, and now therefore not being able to support his family, and, some of his identity being stripped away. That was just extra compounding awfulness on top of it all. Mm-hmm. So we stayed for another year before we came back. And things were better here. We moved to a different area of the city when we came back. He got a new job. Shortly thereafter, I got a new job as well in the same industry, but a different job. But we hadn't dealt with any of the stuff. We hadn't dealt with any of the grief. And as you know, it's just geography. I mean, you can't keep moving and expect that you can change your circumstances without actually changing what's going on in your head and your heart. And of course, on the other side of it, we recognize that now, but in the depths of it, just change your physical location. Clearly, that's the answer, not the answer. So that went on for quite a while, but it never got better. And we were going through the motions, functional but not functioning, if you know what I mean by that. And one day I just woke up and realized that I didn't have any hope anymore. I didn't have any expectation for the future. I didn't have, the hopes and dreams and goals that I was known for. I mean, I am a dreamer. I am a go-getter. That is what I do. And I was not doing any of those things anymore. I was barely functioning and barely surviving. I had a meltdown, crash and burn in November of 2018, I guess. And that was really my bottom. That was my bottom. My husband had hit his bottom earlier, but that was truly my bottom. And, how I came through that from there, I guess, is the balance of the story and how I got to where I am today.
Wow. So when you said you hit that bottom, when we hit a certain place, it's up to us to make choices. And as I have spoken to a lot of people before about it, that can be something that may anger people. And you say, hey, I have a choice. Well, I didn't have a choice. All these things happen. No, you don't have a choice about your circumstances, but you do have to make choices to take action and to move forward. So when you're in a place of hitting rock bottom, it's very difficult to make that choice when you don't have any hope, to say, hey, you know what, I can still live. I can still come from this. You hear people do all the time, but when you're in the middle of it, it's very hard to see. So can you tell us what that next step was for you, as far as, hey, you're now at this place where you have hit bottom, and you're either gonna stay there and die, basically, or you've got to do something. You've got to take some kind of action, because this is no way to live. So what was the driving force in that?
I'd never been in that place before. I had always thought, I can do this. I can handle anything. Whatever life throws at me, I got this. It's no problem. I've always been able to put one foot in front of the other, or get out of bed, or any of those things. And I could not. I had never been in this place before, and it was It was ego busting, not even bruising. It was ego busting. It was overwhelming, and to my husband, it was scary because he had never seen me like that, and I think that was the tipping point for me. It's scary enough for me, but when I see that I'm scaring him because of this, shell of what he knows who he knows his wife is, I think that was what the motivation was for me, is I don't want other people to be scared on my behalf. They can't control that. So first it was admitting surrender. It was, okay, fine, you win. I am not in a good place. I do need some help. I do need to do something different. And it was that admittance of surrender that really gave me the motivation to do the next thing, which seems counterintuitive, but truly that's how it felt. I mentioned earlier that I deal with grief and pain through too much work. And this is absolutely the place I was in. I was working 3 jobs, volunteering and also running a couple of my own companies, as well as, helping to support my husband through his stuff and just the regular day-to-day life things. So the first thing I did was quit 2 out of 3 of my jobs. And I got very lucky with one, and I got not so lucky with the other. The not so lucky one, the leader, he didn't understand. He took it personally. He didn't understand where I was coming from, even though I tried to explain, what was going on and be real authentic about that. But he took it very personally in this and just didn't understand, and that's okay. But my other leader, she was a rock star. She's still a rock star. She just said, how can I help? What can I do? She, in her heartfelt way, she tried to make it easier for me at work. She, one of the things that she did that came from a really great place, but that I wish she'd give me a little more control over, or a little more choice over for myself, is she wanted to not put any additional pressure and stress on me. So she would exclude me from meetings or for projects and things like that, totally from the absolute right place that she was coming from. But I just wanted the choice. I wanted her to include me in the regular things and let me make the choice in my own capacity, sort of thing. But other than that, she was incredible, and she continues to be incredible for sure. I just went back to basics. I knew the things that I was good at and I could almost do in my sleep. And I went back to that stuff. I stopped the really challenging things that was taking a lot of my energy so that I could focus my energy elsewhere. And elsewhere was on myself and on finding a therapist that connected with me. That took a few trials and errors. I don't know if you've had an experience of trying to find a therapist. It's kind of like going on a blind date. And when you have an awful blind date, you don't want to go on another, but you need to until you find your lifelong match. Mm-hmm. And I find that going to a therapist is kind of the same way. Fortunately, I have found my match, which is great, and he's helped me a ton, like just unbelievable. Fortunately, I've gone to therapists my whole life. My family, always encouraged that. We went family counseling, things like that. So I was really fortunate. I didn't also have to get through the stigma of what it felt like to go to counseling. That was kind of a no-brainer for me, which was cool. And then I think one of the biggest things was I stopped trying to control other people's responses. Mm-hmm. We only get to control us. We cannot control mm-hmm. other people. And there is nothing more frustrating than trying to get someone else to change or someone else to do what you want them to do. And how irritating and frustrating when they don't. Well, guess what? They also get to choose. And so I think one of the most freeing things for me was recognizing that my husband, my family, they get to do their things and I get to do my things and model my own behavior out loud. And whether they choose to follow along or they don't, we can make choices after that. But first and foremost, I get to make choices for me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I loved so much of what you said, and I want to address a few things. First of all, when you talk about going back to basics, I found myself in a similar situation, and I think that we all can do that. If you get really overwhelmed with anything, it's very, um, it's good to find a way to simplify, as you said, go back to basics and do those things. For me, it was definitely doing things that were done off of motor memory, where, maybe washing the dishes, things that I didn't have to think about. So I was able to feel good about myself. I was very productive, getting some things done, but I didn't really have to put a lot of critical thinking, into it. It was just something I can do naturally. And I think that and it keeps you busy, and it's some of that stuff keeps you physical. And so it just gives your hands something to do, while your mind is going crazy. And then you talk about the control. I love that piece because, we can't control the circumstances. So we've already talked about that. But then you took it a step further and you said, I couldn't control other people. And, it's very important to know that distinction. You can control how you respond. You can control your ability to, or your motivation to make a choice, to take small steps, whatever it is that you decide to do. But you cannot control other people. So it's very important to have boundaries. You had mentioned earlier that, you may or may not have been able to be around people, or you talked about your, one of the leaders, one of the bosses, I guess, with your job that was not as understanding. And, people have a right to feel whatever they feel. But you also have the right, um, to set yourself up for good things, to take care of your mental and emotional health and well-being by setting those boundaries and say, you know what, I respect your thoughts and your feelings, but right now I'm going to take care of me. And you address that when you say, hey, I can't control what they have. I'm not going to let their disappointment in my choice to make me even more sad or, angry or whatever. And then also another thing that you brought up that made me think about, like relationships. I think you talked about maybe your husband and your family. This is, I see very common, like for me, I resented my husband for the first couple of years because I felt like he did not grieve the way that I wanted him to, or felt like he should grieve. And I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, if that's kind of somewhere where you were thinking the two of you said went in separate directions, you dealt with your grief differently. And I assume, you had different coping skills, like you said, you with work and him with the drinking. And there can be some resentment there. There can be anger there, when one person does not do what you think they could, but neither one of them is good, right? Because you're both doing something rather than feeling the emotions. And it's scary. It's scary to feel those emotions. It's scary to look back and say, look at what I have through. Yes, I acknowledge that I have lost my pet, which, by the way, some people are like, oh my gosh, it was just a dog. But I can't tell you how many people are so heartbroken over their pets. Our pets are our family. Our dog passed away. He was also hit by a car just before my daughter was born. And then we lost her as well. So I can relate, because it's not just the loss of a pet. It is all tied up in more complicated grief, where, it somehow relates and it intertwines. And like you said, it was one loss after another after another. But then you did make that choice to find that help. You sound like you did make the choice to find boundaries, or to create boundaries. And now you have moved even further down that road towards helping other people realize that they can also make those choices. They can also choose not to allow other people's reactions and decisions to affect them. And you know that they know they can't control that, and to create their own boundaries, I'm assuming. So can you talk a little bit about going from, you know, really starting to get that help to now making that decision that, hey, you know what, I've been through a lot, but now I can help other people. So.
Yeah, because it's a very clear memory. Two sort of related memories on how I kind of got to where I am. So the first one was pretty in the depths of the garbage, of the grief, of the stuff. My husband and I had had a particularly hard day. We had, it'd been quite up and down. It'd been very emotional. And it was kind of a quiet moment. And I remember very clearly, he was sort of standing at the window, looking out the window. And he turned around and he looked at me and he said, "You need to write a book." I said, "What are you talking about? I need to write a book." He said, "Well, I'm not going to do it. You have to do it." I said, "Well, fine. What is this book going to be about?" And he says, "You need to write a book about the story of us and all of this stuff we've gone through, because people need to know ahead of time what they can do when they get here, so they don't get here, so that they can recover faster." He says, "You need to tell people all the things we've learned so they don't have to go through what we've gone through." And it was just so, I mean, I want to say profound, but it's not like it was deep or, but it made a ton of sense. I mean, if only we had a manual, right? Like 42, when you've lost your dog, your child, your eye, and your home all in 4 months. Like, clearly that's not a book that I'm going to write. However, the lessons through grief is something that I wish I had known more about prior to this time. And yeah, he's not going to tell that story in any sort of public forum, and so I have his permission to tell our story on behalf of both of us, which is quite cool. So that was sort of the start of it. And then the second kind of, the really biggest action step was a little bit after that. We were on a dog walk, and we plan our entire lives on dog walks. I don't know if it's because we don't have to stare at each other. We can walk side by side, and you're out in nature, and the dogs are being, bringing us joy or what. But we have our best conversations on dog walks. And I was going on about how sort of bored or unsettled or unfulfilled I was feeling in my job, and I was good at it, but it wasn't something that was really I wanted to do for the long term. It wasn't bringing me passion or joy. And he's like, "Well, that's nice. Are you done complaining about it, or what are you going to do about it?"
Wow.
And he was much more articulate and supportive and comforting, but basically that was as serious as I'm caring about it. Let's do something about it now. And from there, the two sort of just melded together, and I said, "Hope. I want to talk about hope. I want to learn more. I want to tell people. I want people to recognize and understand the power of this awesomeness, that it's not just a feeling that you have on the inside, that it's something you can use to change your life, to truly make your life better than today." My definition of hope, and it's very different for everybody, but my definition of hope is that your future will be better than today by taking action over the things you can control. And that's exactly what we've been talking about today, taking action on what you can control. And that is the science of hope. That is what positive psychology is all about. And everyone needs to hear it. We need to use it. We get to use it. We have this power to embrace and to leverage, and these strategies to use, and everyone needs to know. And that is how I got to this place of where hope found me, and where I get the privilege of sharing the power with you and with the people that are listening.
I love that. I love that, because I have a similar message. Well, pretty darn close. Hope and perseverance, absolutely. And it too came out of deep pain, and just wanting other people to know it's okay to talk about things, and you're not going to be in the place you are tomorrow, or I'm sorry, you're not going to be in the place you are today tomorrow. If you make that choice, like you said, if you really take a step forward, you may take steps backwards, but you can always continue to take those steps forward. So I love that. And you talk about the walks, and I think you said dog walks, right? So you're not the only one I have heard talk about that. I have a friend who says she has the best walks, and she actually records them with her husband because it makes for great stories. She's a writer, so I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, it works so good, and I don't know, like I've heard people talk about it at work in some of my workshops and some of the keynotes that I give. We talk about walking meetings for exactly that same reason. You can be so productive, your energy levels are higher, you're out getting sunshine and fresh air. I mean, what better combination could there be for efficiency and productivity and creativity? Yeah, totally.
And I'm obviously not a doctor or anything like that, but there's something about movement. When you start physically moving, you give your brain, part of your brain, something to be occupied with, so it can calm down. And I know there are studies done on that, with things like ADHD or whatever, but one part of your brain can be moving and thinking about that, and the other part can be calm. And I don't know, again, the science, but I think that's fascinating that when you move your body, that it just releases, well, I know we know it releases hormones too. So maybe it's all a big part of it, but I love it. So maybe we should all just do more walks if we can.
Really, it was really fascinating. I recorded an interview for my podcast this morning with a woman who's a gut specialist. She specializes in belly therapy. And we talked so much about the connection between our mental and physical health, and how, and I'm going to get this totally wrong, Allison, so I apologize in advance, but there's this vagus nerve that goes from our brain to our gut, and only 10% of our brain is actually doing the talking, is controlling us in any way. That it's 90% happening based on the signals on this vagus nerve in your gut. Mm-hmm. And she talked about how all the chemicals that are released in our gut, and how that goes back up to our brain, and the physical activity, how that just increases that communication pathway. And clearly I'm butchering all of this, but it was mind-blowing how our bodies work physiologically, biologically. Like, it was so cool. Yeah, it just blew me away.
I have to listen to that episode. I have read things, I believe, the connection between inflammation, the gut and the brain, and that kind of thing.
She talked all about that. Like, my podcast is usually half an hour. I feel like we went on for almost an hour because I could hear her talk forever. Yeah, I'll definitely share when it's published.
Awesome. Cool. And if, for those of you who are listening, if you are interested in Lindsay's podcast episode about the brain and the gut, then we'll see if we can link it up here. And I personally have the best thinking moments when I'm running as well. I mean, love walking too, but any type of physical activity like that. And like I said, it gives you some type of way to relax those nerves, that anxiety, by moving. Even like I told you before, moving through, going through the motor memory things like the washing the dishes, or just doing things around the house helps calm. It has a calming effect on me anyway. So anyways, Lindsay, I love this. I love talking to you about hope, especially, the audience. You guys need to understand that there's definitely a way to renew hope when you are in circumstances. It doesn't always feel like it. It doesn't always seem like there's any way. You may think that you are the only one in the world that is going through your situation. And that is why it is so important to tell your story and share your story and listen to other people's stories, so that while you don't know exactly what another person is going through, because you are not exactly in their shoes. There are so many times when we hold back from releasing information, from releasing things that are on our hearts, that keep us imprisoned in a way to negative emotions and despair. And when we hear other people share their stories, we can start to think about the fact that there is hope. There is hope for the future, and that we are able to take small steps forward, right? We don't want to take huge leaps necessarily, but you can take small steps, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about forward momentum versus backward momentum. We talk a lot about net positive, right? So as long as at the end of the day you're making net positive progress, 2 steps forward. If you're taking 1 step back, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I would even go further to say, as if you didn't make that, and you said net positive today, don't be discouraged about tomorrow, because you can start again tomorrow. There's, as long as you always have tomorrow, you can always start again tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow can absolutely be better than today.
Yes. So, Lindsay, can you tell everybody where they can find you? Certainly the name of your podcast, so that they can check that one out for you.
Absolutely. So my podcast is called Hope Motivates Action, and you can find it on all the podcast places. My website is expertinhope.com, and I am at Lindsay Recknell on both Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you and having the opportunity to share my story, because like you say, it gets a bit easier every time you tell it, but it's so important to talk out loud. So thanks for the opportunity.
Definitely. It's always, I find, important for the person who is sharing as well as it is for the person who's listening. So for those of you out there who are listening, we thank you so very much for listening to Faith Breathed Hope today. We hope that you continue to be blessed and bless others. We'll talk to you next time. And I want to thank you for joining us on Faith Breathed Hope, where you gain inspiration and motivation to renew hope and discover purpose in any circumstance. Please like and share this podcast and give us a review on iTunes. Be blessed.